How's it going, my bakers? Hope your day is going real good so far. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'll show you how to make super soft donuts. You can fry them or bake them. It's up to you. So let's go to the kitchen and get started. Donuts are soft and fluffy by nature, but there is one way to make them even softer. That is by using the scalding method. And it will not only make them softer, it will also make them stay softer for longer. We'll be using all the tricks for this recipe today. The scalding method for softness, the no knead method for ease of preparation. We'll fill them with lemon curd, I'll show you how to make that too. And to finish it off, we'll also glaze them. And if you don't want to fry your donuts, I will show you how to bake them. But I must say, you really can't beat the fried ones. They're a lot softer and they can accommodate more filling inside them. Well, you know, make yours the way you want to make them. I'm just here to give you options and guide you along. So let's get to it and see what we need. Starting with the dough, we'll need some white bread flour, an egg, yeast, salt, sugar, butter, vanilla paste or vanilla essence, and some boiling water for the scald. If you're gonna fry your donuts, you'll need some oil. Ideally, you want to use something that has a neutral flavor. I'm gonna be using sunflower oil. Next up, the lemon curd. For that, we'll need some eggs, sugar, lemon juice, butter, and some cornstarch. This curd recipe uses more eggs than usual. I did that to mellow out the tartness of the lemon. And don't worry, it doesn't taste eggy. Finally, for the sugar glaze, we'll need some icing sugar, salt, vanilla paste, and milk. Onto the equipment, we'll need a pan for cooking our donuts in, a bowl for mixing dough, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe. Some chopsticks will come in handy. They're great for flipping the donuts and great for making a hole for the filling. A sieve for sifting the icing sugar will come in handy, but it's not totally necessary. You can manage without it. And to fill the donuts, we'll need a piping bag. If you have a nozzle, that'll be of great help. If you don't, that's fine, you'll manage. A whisk will come in handy for making the scald and mixing the dough. And a tool for fishing out the donuts from the oil. I'm going to use a slotted metal spoon. You can also use a spatula, or a pair of tongs even. Last but not least, you want something to drain your donuts on. And a cooling rack is a perfect thing for it. It will also be an essential part for the glazing process. Okay, let's begin. First things first, I wanted to make the curd, just to get it out of the way. Combine the sugar and the cornstarch in a pan. Give it a good mix, make sure there's no lumps and everything's evenly distributed. Then pour in the lemon juice and the eggs. Give it a quick mix, set it on medium to high heat, and then cook it for around 5 to 7 minutes, stirring it constantly so it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. Once it becomes nice and thick, we'll take it off and whisk in the butter. A standard curd recipe uses equal amounts of juice, egg, butter and sugar. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm using more eggs, double the amount. This will dilute the harsh lemon flavor. It'll make the curd less acidic. Once the mix is nice and thick, take it off the heat and whisk in the butter in 2 stages. Emulsifying it in stages will reduce the chance of it splitting. You can use this recipe as a base for making any kind of curd you like. Mango, lime, some berry perhaps. And of course, if you're going to use something less acidic than lemon juice, then reduce the amount of eggs by half. But you can make a curd out of pretty much anything. Once it's done, transfer it to a bowl, cover it with cling film so it's touching the surface so the curd doesn't develop a skin on top, and place it in the fridge to cool down completely. Next up, let's start making the dough. It all starts with the scald. In a large bowl, combine a portion of flour, sugar, salt, butter, vanilla paste and boiling water. We'll whisk it all up and then leave it to cool down completely. If you're going to use all of the water of the recipe in the scald, then it'll take around 3 to 4 hours to cool down. Alternatively, use half the water in the scald and then use the other half for temperature control. I actually made mine a day ahead of time and left it to cool down at room temperature, but that meant that it ended up slightly cooler than I wanted it to. Which is not the end of the world, of course. We want the scald to be around 24 to 25 degrees Celsius. Or 75 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, all of this heavily depends on the temperature of your kitchen. But regardless of what you do, once this mix is nice and cool, we can finish making the dough. Add the yeast, the egg, and then whisk it all up. Then finally, add the flour and mix it to a dough. And if you are not familiar with the scalding method and don't know what it does, then check out my video about it in Principles of Baking playlist. I think it's one of the best methods for making bread softer, and it makes it stay softer for longer. Yes, it adds another step to the process, but it's well worth it. And it's not like we have to do anything except wait. The finished dough will be loose and sticky, but that's normal, don't worry. Wet your hands with water to make it easier to handle. I always like to shape my dough into a ball after mixing. It is similar to giving it a fold, which is exactly what we need to do when making no-knead bread. So like I said earlier, my scald was slightly cooler than I wanted it to, so my final dough temperature also came out a little bit cooler, but it's not too bad. I'll just leave it to ferment for slightly longer. Even at this slightly lower temperature, this dough will rise pretty rapidly. Judge your dough by its size. Bulk fermentation is finished once the dough is doubled, which for me took around an hour and a half. But this dough needs to be folded a couple times to replace the kneading. So after the first 30 minutes of fermentation, we're going to give this dough its first fold. It is a bit loose and sticky, so you want a light dusting of flour there. Tip the dough out on the table with the smooth side down, flatten it out, fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach point where you started. Then flip the dough smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, and that's the fold done. Most of my recipes lately have been cold fermented, and if you want to cold ferment this dough, you can certainly do it. Pop it in the fridge right after mixing and perform the folds at the same intervals I'm doing here. And after the second fold, leave it in the fridge for 24 hours before continuing as per recipe. Okay, after the first fold, cover the dough up, leave it to rise again, and then fold it for the second time. The second fold of course goes exactly the same way as the first one. And after the second fold, cover it up and let it finish bulk fermentation. As you can see, it has puffed up beautifully. It has definitely doubled in size since we started. And if you are cold fermenting, this will be the time when you remove your dough from the fridge. After bulk fermentation, weigh your dough and divide it into 12 equal pieces. If you want to make smaller donuts, divide the dough into more pieces. As ever, after dividing, I'm going to pre-shape these dough balls, then let them rest and then do the final shaping. This will ensure that all the donuts are nice and uniform and nice and smooth. Pre-shaping is just a rough shaping step. Don't worry about them being perfect or not. Just round the dough off more or less. This dough is quite moist and sticky, so I'm not going to cover it during the resting stage. And it's only 15 minutes, so they're not going to dry out too much. And because this dough is slightly sticky, you might want to use a light dusting of flour when doing the final shaping. So after the dough has rested for 15 minutes, dust it lightly, place the dough ball with its smooth side down on the table, fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach point where it started. Then flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table. Finally, you can pick it up and pinch the seam together at the bottom. And that's how you make a little donut dough ball. Now you just have to repeat it 11 more times. And then clean down the mess. I placed the donuts on non-stick paper lined trays greased with oil. One tray will be baked, the other one will be fried. When it comes to the fried ones, the reason I greased the tray is so I can easily remove them. I greased the other tray to kind of mimic frying when I'm baking them in the oven. And I brushed the tops with oil as well. I'll work with them one by one. The first tray will be fried, we'll bake the other ones later. Regardless of what you decide to do, we still need to let them proof and puff up before they can be cooked. And just for reference, right now my kitchen is at around 24 degrees Celsius or 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and the final proof took around an hour and a half. And again, you want them to double in size. Towards the end of fermentation, preheat your oil, 160 degrees Celsius, 320 Fahrenheit. And look at that, these bad boys are puffed up beautifully. When I shake the tray, they have a little wobble to them. That is always a good sign. They will take about 5 minutes in total to fry. The way I like to do it is 1.5 minutes, flip them, do another 1.5 minutes, and then finish with another minute on each side. And make sure there's no kids or pets distracting you as you're doing this. You really don't want to have a frying accident. Of course, if your pan is larger, you can fry more donuts at once. Also, when the oil comes up to temperature, turn the heat down on the hob. Don't switch it off completely, leave it on like medium to low, or else the oil will get hotter and hotter and your donuts might get too dark. Like the 3 you see on the left side here. Of course, it's not a big deal. They're not burnt or anything. It's just that when it comes to donuts, I prefer that nice golden color to dark brown. Okay, let's leave those to cool down on the rack and let's move on with the other ones. I'm gonna bake them at the same temperature as the other ones were fried at. 160 degrees Celsius, 320 Fahrenheit, fan on. I let these proof for a little bit longer because they were in the fridge for a while. But now they are definitely ready for the oven, so let's get them in there. These bad boys will take around 20 minutes to bake. And once they have a nice evenly colored golden crust, they are ready. And that's how you bake donuts. I don't know if we can still call them donuts, but I guess it doesn't matter. Now we need to let them cool down completely before we can start filling them. It's a nice gradient from light to dark, left to right. They all look different, but they will all taste nice. Now let's move on with the curd. Let's get it in a piping bag. First things first, mix it up so it's nice and smooth. If you are going to use a nozzle in your piping bag, then here's a little trick for you to prevent things coming out the other end as you're filling it. Twist the bag up and stick it inside the nozzle, and then place the bag into a tall cup or a jug so both of your ends are free. Then just pour the curd in. Then you can twist it up and tie off the other end. I cannot remember where I got this from. I have this little basket that fits 12 donuts perfectly, and it really helps me out when I need to fill them. If you don't have something like this, then you will just have to manage with one hand. But I'm sure you can find something around the house that will work. Okay, before we can fill the donuts, we need to make a hole. My chopstick is tapered, so first I use the skinny end and then I use the fat end. You want to go almost all the way through, but do not puncture the donut on the other side. You can also wiggle the chopstick around to make the hole bigger. Because the fried donuts are softer and looser inside, they can accommodate more filling. So if you are going to fry them all, you will not have any filling left over, which is how it should be. If you're gonna bake them all, then you can just reduce the filling by 1/4. Okay, let's leave these on the side. There's one more thing we need to prepare, the icing. Sift the icing sugar into a large bowl, then add the salt, vanilla paste and the milk. Then mix until it's all nice and smooth. If you don't have a sieve, don't worry. Just whisk it for a bit longer and all the lumps should disappear. And if you don't have vanilla paste or you don't want to use it, then just leave it out. If you want this to be extra lemony, you could just use lemon juice instead of milk. But whatever you do, keep the pinch of salt in. It balances the flavor really well. Transfer the icing to a deeper bowl with a smaller footprint. That'll make your job easier when you coat the donuts. The rack comes in handy again. Place it over a tray so when the icing drips down it doesn't make a mess. Then use your hands for coating the donuts and a fork for lifting them out of the icing. Using a fork will ensure that more of the icing ends up back into the bowl and not on the tray, because you don't want to run out of it. Once we coat all the donuts, there will only be a little bit left over. And that is it. Our delicious project is almost done. And I hope you agree that it's pretty simple, especially for the result that you can get. One last thing we need to do is leave the icing to set. That'll take at least 1 hour. And they're still in the same order. The ones on the left are the baked ones and the ones on the right are the fried ones. I would take the fried ones over the baked ones anytime. But the baked ones do have one thing going for them. They have a very smooth and perfect looking crust, which works well with the icing. But when it comes to taste and texture, it is the fried ones that win. Just look at this fluffy goodness. They're even better still because you can fit more filling inside them. But of course it's your donut. You make it how you like it. So what do you think this donut recipe? What's your favorite donut filling? Let me know down in the comments. You want to see more videos like this one? Click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.